What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with episode 69, nice, of Dynasty Decisions. You guys know what we do around here. We break down your Dynasty teams. We talk about trades. We talk about, rebuilding and contending type of moves, how you should approach the offseason. Everything and anything under the sun Dynasty Fantasy Football is covered on this channel. If you want to be part of future videos of Dynasty Decisions, you can submit your team for free, which will be part of a queue, or you can sign up over on Patreon to get access to skip the line and get your team listed as soon as possible. And that will be linked down below in the description. If you guys enjoy this video at any point, as always, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. If you're new around here, hit the bell notification so that you get notified anytime we post anything, and leave any comments down below. But before we get into it, Danny, how you doing?
Doing well. And yeah, damn, 69 episodes of Dynasty Decisions. Nice, by the way, like you said. Man, I appreciate you guys for that continued support on this series. We started this up. I still remember episode 1. We're like, oh, we're not sure, how's the crowd going to like it? How are they going to view it? I think we even had a completely different name for, I think it was like Grade My Dynasty Team when it first came out. So we've been through the road of developing this into the series, but of course you guys enjoy it. We love helping you guys potentially make those money-making moves to set your Dynasty teams up for the foreseeable future. So yeah, I'm ready to roll another 8 teams today. Can't wait to roll up the sleeves and get into it.
Yeah, nothing like epiphanies on episode 69 of a series. So before we get into it, you guys know what we got to do. Set the intro. Okay, so the first team coming from Juanye, who I believe is the only patron submission of this video. It's a 12-team, 1-quarterback league, full PPR, start 7. So very shallow league format. Justin Fields is a starting quarterback there. Tony Pollard, Carter, etc. at running back. Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, Drake London, Michael Gallup, Elijah Moore, Traylon Burks, and a couple other guys there. Rashad Bateman, Jacoby Myers at wide receiver. Kyle Pitts and Noah Fant is his top 2 tight ends. And then he has the 101, the 102, the 107, 206, 207, 208, 212, or 211, 402, 3 2024 first, 2 2024 seconds, 2 thirds in 2024, and then all of his future picks on top of that. So he said he was in a full status rebuild last year, looking to potentially switch to a competitive team or a more competitive team, maybe a house money type of year for him this year. And he said he's working on a couple trades. So what are your thoughts on the team first? And then we'll get into some of the trades that he's working on.
Really good nucleus. Fields, as your main guy there. Kyle Pitts. At least you have those positions pretty much locked down at your quarterback 1 and tight end 1 spot. I'll get into the quarterback spot in a little bit later, but you got adequate depth overall. I mean, Pollard, McLaurin, Moore, Drake London, another building stone type of piece. Overall, I think you did well in constructing this team. The route I was going to say is you have Justin Fields, you have 101. What I'm doing is I am using that 101, leveraging it with, maybe another pick, maybe a receiver.
League.
Oh, it's a 1-quarterback league. Okay. So that changes a lot of things now. I am taking Bijan unless, God forbid, somebody offers me 3 or 4 first-round picks. In a 1-quarterback league, I'm looking for a complete overpay because realistically with this team, you add Bijan Robinson and you have Tony Pollard, a couple pieces there, built out wide receiver core, still with the 102 like you kind of mentioned. It changes a lot of things in a 1-quarterback versus super flex. I would say I'd be willing to add Bijan to this team. If it was absolutely. A super flex, though. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say in a super flex, we know the difference between, let's say, Bryce Young at 102 and Bijan Robinson at 101. There's a difference for sure. There's definitely a tier difference between those two guys. But I mean, 101 in a 1-quarterback league versus, Gibbs, your top receiver, whoever ends up being at 102 there, is going to be like a 2 to 3 round startup pick difference, most likely. Maybe it's a little bit closer if people really highly value Gibbs and he, clears all the size thresholds and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, yeah, I'd be looking to spend my picks this year, build out a, competitive roster that way with the basis of the young running backs that you're probably going to have. Because I would assume, assuming Gibbs clears everything that we need him to clear, you can go Bijan, Gibbs 101, 102. Or maybe you want to, you love one of the receivers over the other. You want to go JSN 102. You want to go Jordan Addison 102 or something like that. At 107, you're probably still going to get a great, running back talent like a Charbonnet or a Tucker or something like that. Or another good wide receiver prospect as well. Maybe QJ falls there. Maybe Addison falls there. Something like that. So I think you're in a good spot just given where your picks are positioned and the needs of your team. And knowing that this is a 1-quarterback league, you have Justin Fields. Maybe in the second round, you get like a Will Levis to fall to you. to add a second quarterback because Zach Wilson probably not worth a whole lot in this format right now. So, I mean, you have the picks just this year to build out this nucleus. And then on top of that, you have 3 picks in the first round in 2024.
This being a one quarterback completely changes the route that I was going to go. Because if
a
this
start
was
7 also, by the way. So studs are
yes,
very, very crucial in this format.
exactly. So in this type of format, again, if it was a super flex, I would have said, oh, maybe you transition some pieces. You add a couple quarterbacks, which I was getting into when it was deferred to me earlier. But in a one quarterback league, like you have a stud factor, a quarterback, you have, the gold standard at tight end. Like Bush kind of said, just keep picking away, try to add some studs. Maybe you take Bijan at 101, maybe you use the 107 plus DJ Moore and see how much more you would have to add to get like a CeeDee Lamb type. Because realistically, in a start 7, man, you have more than adequate depth, even if you package a couple guys together. You just need, that 18, 19 PPR point per game receiver, that 20 plus PPR point per game running back with Bijan. Overall, if you add those couple like key inserts to this team, not only are you competing for a championship, I think this can be like a top 3 level team.
Yeah, and even though it's a one quarterback league, you could stand to upgrade at that position too. If you have a couple second round picks, you could take Justin Fields and 2-2s and go after, maybe a Burrow, maybe a Herbert, somebody like that at the top of the quarterback position if you want to get a little bit more secure there. Because even though Justin Fields, a great fantasy quarterback, we don't necessarily know what his like positional longevity is in the long term. And I think that could be a move that you could make. But again, I mean, as far as trading your 102 is concerned, I mean, in a one quarterback format, you're going to need a couple picks to go your way to get, adequate value for that draft spot. You already have 3 2024 first. I'd be more inclined to probably just stick and pick at 102. But if you don't have any kind of lenience of those receivers, of Jahmyr Gibbs, and somebody offers you, 105 and 109 or something, I'm totally cool making a move like that for 102. But for the most part, I probably wouldn't force a trade there unless the value is pretty adequate. He also, he's looking to make some other trades here. Tony Pollard for AJ Dillon in the 203. I mean, I would probably rather have AJ Dillon than Tony Pollard straight up. So I think that's a great move if you can get that done. He also says he's trying to buy Marquise Brown, Michael Pittman, and the 2023 202. He didn't say for what, but I would say, I mean, both of those receivers are definitely like buy low candidates for us. So those guys are definitely fine guys to go after. He also lists his past trades here. We're not going to get rid of into all of them. But just looking it over, I'll put them on the screen right now. It looks like he kind of took a lot of guys to the woodshed in most of these trades. Like getting Drake London for Jameson Williams stands out as a pretty easy one to make. Getting Tony Pollard in an early second at the beginning of the season this year. It looks like it was right after that first game when Cordarrelle Patterson, like 25 touches. He sold Cordarrelle Patterson, like a 30-something-year-old running back, for Tony Pollard in an early second. It looks like you've done a good job taking advantage of like value windows, getting like 2 firsts for DeAndre Swift, plus a bunch of other pieces, getting David Montgomery in a first for Leonard Fournette. Like you did a really good job in a lot of these trades. It's not even worth going over all of them because you did that good of a job.
Jesus Christ. Some of these transitions are ridiculous. Monty for Pickens plus Higgins. Okay, this one's actually a little bit more fair, but you still got mid-first equity, a really good receiver in a second. So that's the closest deal, and it's still a very favorable deal for your own right. You got a first, a second Terry for George Pickens. So like what? Jameson for Drake London. I don't know how you pulled this off, because I mean Drake London, with the peripherals he had, we already preferred him coming into the year. And Jameson Williams, what had he proven by 11:01? What would that be? November 1st. Like what had he proven?
A
by
long
then?
touchdown probably was the only thing that happened, I would imagine. So yeah, definitely. Or maybe just the hype of him coming back was enough to sell him. I don't even know. And Drake London was, on a bit of a cold stretch at that point in the season. He was still commanding targets, but the offense, it felt like, was throwing 10 times a game. So there was not a lot of production going around. But overall, I think you're in a great spot. Your league, it looks like, clearly doesn't properly value picks. Even though it's a one quarterback league, I would say continue stacking assets. And I like the move that he made at the end here, where he took Godwin, the 106 and the 108, go after a stud, get 101, yes. Get Bijan Robinson. I would make more moves like that. In a start 7, one quarterback league, you want the best possible starting lineup that you can have. And that kind of move, facilitates that. So I would continue to stack up value so that you can, potentially overpay on some of these studs and afford to, lose some value if need be to get, maybe a Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson or pieces like that.
Yeah. With how you've already built out the value of the team, you've already gotten more than adequate value for the assets that you already had. Now you can just say, fuck it. I've already accumulated these picks. I've already accumulated this depth. Let me just also win the league, and people won't expect what you're doing. Like, you've already gotten, fringe assets, turn them into good assets, and now you can go to an elite asset. Like, it's easy. You turn basically those bad assets into elite assets.
Yeah, basically. So we can move on to Vadakan's team here. 12-team, start 11, half PPR Superflex. Almost a polar opposite situation. A lot more depth required in this league in a 2-quarterback Superflex league there. Fields, Lance, Daniel Jones mainly at quarterback. Kareem Hunt and some other guys there at running back. Chase, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Deontay Johnson, Kadarius Toney, Wandale, John Mechie, etc. at wide receiver. And then Pitts, Dolchich, another kind of like good rebuilding core of tight ends there, along with Pitts Fryermuth that I mentioned in yesterday's video. 101, 103, 112, 205 and the rookie draft. And then he also has an extra first rounder in 2024, one being top 3 potentially. So for the most part, I mean, this is a very good shell of a team for the most part here. He's got great quarterback assets. He's got great wide receiver assets. He's got a gold standard tight end. And then he also has, like I said, the 101, 103. He said he's taking Bijan most likely. I would agree with that. You pretty much just need to fill out this running back core, and then you have yourself a competitive team.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I mean, he does have a trade listed here that we can quickly look over as well. So he received Kareem Hunt, John Mechie, the 112, the 205, a 2024 first, and another 2024 first. That's at least going to be top 6. And he ended up giving up Etienne, Dylan, Gage, 203, a 24 second, and a 2025 first. So if we're like looking at this contextually, 25 first, given the fact that it's so far away, you could probably make the case that 112, give or take, washes that out, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
So if we're washing that out, then we're looking at ETN, Dylan, Gage, and 2-2s for Hunt, Mechie, 205, 24 first, and another 2024 first. So I would rather Mechie over Gage, but for ease sake, let's just say Mechie in the 205 equals Gage in the 203, whatever. Even that out. So now we're looking at Hunt, the 24 first and the 24 first. Sorry, 2024 first for ETN and Dylan. Like, I would be willing to cash out on those 2 running backs to get Hunt and those 2 picks personally. So I think it's a fair trade, but I do like how you've maneuvered your assets because you're getting Bijan Robinson, because you're already getting the 103, potentially Jahmyr Gibbs, and you're giving yourself more flexibility to maybe add, a Marvin Harrison Jr. in 2024. Maybe, shop that pick if it's in quarterback range. You have a lot more flexibility for your own right.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a good spot right now where you can add potential studs to that trade where, if that is a top 6 minimum first round pick and that turns into Marvin Harrison, then you flip this trade on its head. Or, worse for the opposing guy that made the trade, you get Caleb Williams out of this trade or something like that. You're going to be in a really good spot. He also wants some advice on his rookie picks because he says, he's looking Bijan, obviously 101. He said probably JSN or Gibbs at 103. I think that's a fair distinction. Whichever one you kind of falls to or whichever one you prefer is fine. He also says I'm going, BPA at 112, whether it's, Boutte or Tucker or Evans or something like that. And then at 205, 301, he said he's probably going to force running backs regardless, given the strength of this class and given the fact that those are probably going to be sweet spots to get a Tank Bigsby potentially at 205. Maybe at 301, you get like an Izzy, a Banakanda or something like that. And you can fill out your running back core that way because that really is the only distinct weakness on your team at this current point in time. He also said he's considering trading DJ Moore. What trades would you suggest for his team, and how would that affect as far as like his draft picks is concerned? He also said he's open to trading 112 or 205. He said, be very nitpicky, please, trying to win this year. So I would say, I mean, your wide receiver core is ready to win. You behind Jamar Chase, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, and Deontay Johnson, you don't need a whole lot. I wish you had a little, like one extra piece of like, young upside, but Toney and Wandale and Mechie is probably good enough depth behind those guys. Once you fill out this running back core, let's say you go Bijan 101 and Gibbs 103, and then you grab, Evans at 112, then you're ready to compete with this running back core as well. Maybe more house money because they're rookies, but for the most part, You should be good. And then at quarterback, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Daniel Jones, you're going to get 2 top 12 quarterbacks out of that. However it ends 100%. Up playing out, I would say you're going to get 2 top 12 quarterbacks. And then you have Pitts with Dolchich as depth. So I would say you're ready to compete with this team. Just, again, continue to take best player available during these draft picks. If you want to trade DJ Moore, I'd probably be looking for somebody more productive than DJ Moore if you were going to trade him because you're ready to compete with this team. If somebody was really low on like Devontae Adams or something, I don't think that's like a terrible trade to go after. I don't know what you'd have to add on top of DJ Moore to get that done. Maybe, more in 205, and maybe you can get Adams in a third in return for that. I think that would be, be a solid move. You could also take a risk potentially on DJ Moore for like a younger ascending wide receiver as well. And take the risk that that guy makes a leap or something like that. You might be able to get a guy who's like similar age range, but maybe more productive, that you like their outlook a little better too. Like, potentially Jerry Jeudy or a Marquise Brown or something like that. So that's probably the types of players that I'd be looking at for DJ Moore. I would be looking to continually add another wide receiver if I was trading DJ Moore, though, because I think if you traded DJ Moore, you'd be a little bit, hamstrung at that position in a competitive window.
Yep. No, I fully agree. With DJ Moore, I mean, I feel like at this point, I mean, you're a 25-year-old wide receiver. You haven't had the wide receiver one season quite yet. Like, yeah, you should get a quarterback upgrade this offseason, but realistically, what if it doesn't happen? Like, what if you're looking at, a wide receiver 2 for the next 2-3 years, and he's 27 years old with one, maybe at max, wide receiver 1 season point per game under his belt. Like, I love DJ Moore, and I think he's a great NFL player, but at some points you got to turn that, peripheral look, that elite athleticism, that, real life standing into some production on the field. So it's tough. We definitely just want to see DJ Moore have that breakout year, but I have no question marks when it comes to Devontae Adams. I know he's going to give me 1,400 yards, 12 plus touchdowns, regardless of what happens.
Yeah, and DJ Moore is bordering onto that like Cortland Sutton territory of where like, okay, like great peripherals, great production, in theory, but not necessarily like full season, fantasy points per game like we're looking for. So yeah, DJ Moore, I understand why you want to shop him. Could have a rookie quarterback too. Like, again, that'll probably give him another hamstrung season as far as like production is concerned. If we have Will Levis throwing him the ball this year, who's, considered a project, and even worse if it's Anthony Richardson throwing him the ball. So definitely a guy that I'm fine shopping. We can move on to the next team though here in Bangkok Minister. Just wondering what his draft strategy should be. He has his team listed here. Any trades that he should go for. And then a couple that he has listed. So I'm going to go over the team first. 14 team PPR Dynasty Superflex tight end premium. So again, quarterbacks extremely scarce. Tua and Justin Fields, 2 top 12 guys there, definitely helps. Or top 15 guys at the very least with Tua. Travis Etienne, AJ Dillon, Tony Pollard, Khalil Herbert, and some other guys that are running back. Receiver core is pretty loaded. Jalen Waddle, CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Christian Watson, and Curtis Samuel, et cetera there. At tight end, he doesn't really have a guy of note. He has Will Dissly, Jelani Woods, Chigo Kronkro. Nobody solidified at that position, but he does have quite a bit of draft capital listed here. 102, 106, 107, 108, 109, 112, 3 firsts in 2024, 3 seconds in 2024, 2 late round picks additionally in 2024, and then 3 thirds in 2025. So as like decent or solid as this team looks, you got a war chest on your hands.
This is why some of these trades are downright ridiculous, to be honest. 2023 second he got for Rex Burkhead. 2023 second he got for Josh Reynolds. 2023 third for Kate Auden. Okay, in a 14-teamer. That's actually probably the only realistic trade, to be honest. Dawson Knox for a 2023 first and Tony Pollard.
I understand why he doesn't have any tight ends now.
Fuck. This one, it's Josh Allen, but if you're telling me consolidating Josh Allen in a 14-team league with that many starters into Tua, CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, CEH, and draft equity, like, yeah, I'm fine. It's tough losing that stability of Josh Allen, but if you're going to move off of him, like, at least this is an adequate package. And then finally, you're able to transition George Pickens, Madison in the 2023 third for the 102 in a repeat 14-team Superflex league. You're telling me right now somebody traded their fucking draft quarterback equity for George Pickens?
Yeah, I mean, George Pickens is a fun player, but Bryce Young in a 14-teamer, he's going to be a top 15 pick for sure. So, I mean, he just lost so much value on that trade. It's pretty simple to me. With these picks, 102 is Bryce Young, most likely, right? Like, it's your top quarterback. Easy. If it's not Bryce Young, it's whoever your top quarterback is. For me, given your team's construction, given that's a 14-team tight end premium, I'm fine with Mayer you pick 106 to 109. So nobody's going to be picking in between you there. As long as Mayer is on the board, 106, he'll be on the board at 109 because you're picking there also. You just take best player available with most of those picks, right? You could grab, let's say Gibbs or a different running back goes 106. Maybe you grab a wide receiver like a Jordan Addison at 107, grab Michael Mayer there at 108. Maybe there's still a quarterback on the board even that mixes into there. Like, you're in a really, really good spot, knowing that you also have all this draft capital in 2024 as well. So your goal at this point is to acquire studs, which, again, as good as this Josh Allen trade looks, because you got Tua, Lamb, and DJ Moore, I almost would have rather still had Josh Allen on this team.
I would have too, given how important a quarterback is in a 14-team PPR superflex. But like, I'm just looking at this. First of all, we were talking about Bryce Young. I can guarantee you in this type of setting, 13 of the first 15 picks should be quarterbacks. I do not care. The only two exceptions in this type of format, keep in mind, 14-team Superflex League, 28 starting quarterbacks on a weekly basis are going to be in people's lineups. 13 of the top 15 picks should be quarterbacks. The only two exceptions, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. So in that type of format, like he kind of said, Bryce Young is a locked in top 15 overall startup pick. George Pickens is going what? Round 4, round 5, maybe?
Yeah, at best, even the highest George Pickens stands. I would say that there's a chance because it's a 14-team tight end premium that Pitts slides in there. I would say of the first 20 picks, 16 are probably quarterbacks for the most part. Even guys like Lance and Bryce Young and these dudes will probably fit their way in there as well. So I actually would gauge the market on Kyle Pitts as well. If somebody's lower on Kyle Pitts, you could definitely go after him. If it costs you 107, 108, and one of your 2024 first to go after Kyle Pitts, I honestly don't even care. I think that's probably a fine package to give up. And you might not even have to give up that much. You might be able to get away with 2 1s and 2 2s or something like that. And for the most part, you fill out this wide receiver core in the draft, you're going to have an opportunity to draft, probably 3 wide receivers with those picks 106 to 112, if not more. You can grab maybe all 3 of the top receivers in this class, given that quarterbacks, if Richardson and Levis go top 10 in the NFL draft, I would expect the top 5 overall rookie picks probably to have 4 quarterbacks in it too.
All I'm going to say, brother, is enjoy the dynasty that this team's going to yield for you in 2024 on, because I don't see how you're going to be able to lose with this team between 2024 and 2027, to be quite honest. That is how well built it is. 14 team. It's supposed to be a scare starting lineup where you're starting, dart throws every week. And this guy's got the level of depth and the level of pick equity that he has. Ridiculous.
Yeah. He also, so he's inquiring about Bijan, just out of curiosity. He said, I was offered Kyler and Bijan for 102, 106, ETN and Waddle. To me, that's a tad steep. You're giving up, a solid quarterback asset who will be valued not close to Kyler, but relatively close to Kyler with Bryce Young once he enters the NFL. And then it's basically Bijan 106, ETN and Waddle, or Bijan for 106, ETN and Waddle, which to me seems a little too much. So I would say I'd probably just, bite the bullet. If you want Bijan that bad, probably just wait for a buy low window on him. Maybe he gets drafted like the Ravens or something and you can get him cheaper at that point. But I would probably not send out that type of trade. So we can move on to the next team and we'll try and speed these up a little bit. We got DTB Brownie here. You guys can see his team on the screen there. Tua, Daniel Jones, Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall. I don't know if that's Jamal or Javonte Williams. Hopefully it's Javonte for his sake. Antonio Gibson there at running back, wide receiver, Devontae Adams, Drake London, George Pickens, Calvin Ridley, Jacoby Myers, etc. And then Pat Freiermuth, Gerald Everett at tight end. He has a bunch of trades made there in the season, and he also has the 103. He says a late 2023 first, maybe like the 110, and then doesn't have his second round pick. And then he looks like he has all of his picks by the looks of it in 2024. So he basically wants to know our opinion on the trades. He said he went with his gut when he made these trades. Did he get screwed, basically? So I think it's a clear he got fleeced on the first trade, personally.
I'm sorry, brother. I appreciate, asking us for our honest opinion, but the guy took you behind the woodshed, hit you a couple times at the bat and just kind of left you there, to be honest. You can make the argument realistically in some leagues with how high the market value is for Bijan. Adams and Walker for Bijan and the 110 might be a realistic type of move.
I would take Bijan in the 110 in that package.
That's what I'm saying. Or Bijan and probably Bijan in the mid second.
Yeah. I mean, to give up 3 first round picks, one of them being the 101 and 2, mid first by the looks of it, on top of a mid second, a 301, picks that should have some value for, a 30-year-old wide receiver and a running back with 40 target per season upside. I mean, I like Kenneth Walker. I like Devontae Adams, but yeah, you got taken behind the woodshed for sure. I'm assuming November 17th would have been at the peak of Kenneth Walker's powers, most likely. So usually we don't want to buy players at that point. If we have players at that point, we either want to, reap that production if we're a contender, or we want to sell that production into more value. And I would say you bought the production when both of those guys were at a peak, just performing like lights out.
This is a tough blow because I would make the argument that you paid too mid first week too much.
Yeah.
So, again, we can't, look at hindsight right now. Obviously, we're granted hindsight. We know that ended up finishing 101. Maybe at the time he made this deal, that guy was, fifth in the standings, and then just his team completely collapsed. Who knows what happened? Regardless, though, what we do know now is it is a tough blow. However, I mean, Walker and Adams should still be decent pieces for you, even if you paid too much there. I do like this next move, though. I mean, you got off Kirk Cousins. You're able to get, a mid 2024, mid to late 2024 first, and, a young upside piece with Elijah Mitchell attached to a great offense. If anything were to happen to, Christian McCaffrey, he could potentially see his market value go up a lot in value. So overall, I think this was a good transition out of Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, it's like a B+ trade. I would say you probably got a fat F on the first trade because you gave up way too much value. And had you had those picks, you'd be in a much better position to rebuild this thing, really kind of get this thing going. I'd say given the current state of your team, you're probably looking at like a house money year because Breece Hall is coming off that ACL tear. And because you're looking at a house money year, the guy that you acquired, Devontae Adams, is probably on the trade block, in my opinion.
Yep. No, exactly. You pretty much summed it up there. In terms of your current capital, I mean, you still have, some flexibility to play with. You have all of your picks in 2024 for the most part. You have all of your picks in 2025, along with, a really decent stable here, 103, 110 to potentially make some transitions. This roster, even despite, overpaying for Adams and Walker, you're still in a really good spot. I mean, you have, really good running back production, arguably two of the top three running back assets in Dynasty once Bijan enters the fold. Wide receiver, Adams, London, Pickens, Ridley. Like, yeah, you got a good nucleus. It's just, man, I'm just thinking about adding Bijan Robinson. You would have had, Walker, or you wouldn't have had Walker, but you would have had Hall, Robinson, and all of those first round picks to potentially build long term. But I mean, if you're still in a good spot regardless. Most teams, if they were to make that move, would be left decimated.
Yeah, pretty much. He also says, what position should I be targeting at 103 and 107? So I don't know if that's a mistype or whatever. If he also has 107, that obviously helps your team out. He said he was thinking QB and wide receiver focus. I'm sure you guys would agree. At 103, quarterback should maybe be the pick there. You got the one thing I would say, given your team's current state, that you're in like a, first year, kind of seeing what happens, I would be more inclined to move 103 plus, Daniel Jones, who has kind of like inflated value at the current moment, and see what kind of quarterback you could get with that. I don't know if you're going to get up to Herbert necessarily, but if you can get Kyler Murray in a 3 or something for a move like that, I'd be willing to make something like that happen.
I think it might be able to get you a Herbert. And if you can't get up to Herbert, I mean, I would be comfortable doing that for Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, Fields and Lawrence maybe would be guys that you could go after. If people are not quite bought into Trevor Lawrence, I would make the case that you could go after him as well. Lamar Jackson's, I mean, seems like he always has depressed market value, also would make some sense with this team. Yeah, you're in a good spot. I think I would be less inclined to spend the pick on CJ Stroud, though, is like my overall opinion on it, just because I think CJ Stroud, while he would help your team, you kind of already have like 2 CJ Strouds on your team with Tua and Kenny Pickett. Like, they're good pocket passing quarterbacks. You don't really have necessarily the guy that's going to be like a difference-making fantasy quarterback. And instead of having 4 solid quarterbacks, which you would have if you drafted CJ Stroud, I would rather have 3, 2 solid quarterbacks and 1 great quarterback if you could transition that way. And then he also says, young JSN, any of those guys at 107 or 110. Yeah, I mean, if any of them fall, like, I would be totally cool with that. Johnston, Addison, Richardson, Levis, et cetera. Just go kind of what your best, player available is. And if the best player available ends up being a quarterback like Richardson or Levis at 107 or 110, wherever the pick ends up being, then I would say you're in a good spot there and you can just draft that player and potentially move off that asset or move off of one of your current quarterbacks.
Yep. No, I definitely agree. Overall, I mean, you're still in a good spot. And like Corey said, maybe add one of those quarterbacks to, your team. We can move on to the next team, though, and we'll try to keep these a little more rapid fire. I know we said that a little bit prior, but, we don't want to keep you here for an hour. Next team is going to be from Jay Golds. I'll just read these out. Quarterbacks, he has Josh Allen and Zach Wilson. I'm assuming this is a 1 quarterback league. He doesn't really even say here. No, he does say start 9, 1 quarterback, half tight end premium. So keep that in mind. Running back, Eckler, Sanders, ETN, Breece Hall, really loaded at that spot. Wide receivers, Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams, Jerry Jeudy, Chris Godwin. a little bit weaker there. And then at tight end, you have the gold standard himself, Kyle Pitts, along with two 2023 ones, 2024 one, and a 2024 third, along with all of his 2025 picks. He basically just wants us to go over a couple of these trades and ultimately what he should be looking to do with his picks. His picks in 2023 ended up materializing to the 105 and the 109.
Yeah, so let's cover these trades first. I would say, like, just generally speaking about his team, he's pretty, in a good spot relatively at all positions. You have, the best quarterback and tight end in a one quarterback league, that you can have. So you're definitely solidified there. At running back, I mean, we've talked about Austin Eckler already as being, potentially a guy that we would move off of, just given the age, given the fact that he was the RB1 this season. You can probably transition him. I would inquire about seeing what it cost me to get from Eckler to Bijan. I don't know how much you'd have to add additionally to Eckler to get there. But if this is a more casual league, people will see that Eckler finishes the RB1 this year. Maybe you go Eckler, Miles Sanders, and one in your 109 or something, and go after Bijan Robinson, and maybe you can even get a pick back on top of it if people really don't know what hit them with that kind of prospect. So I would consider something like that to move off of Austin Eckler, because I want to keep this thing competitive. But I think Austin Eckler, if you can transition him now, would make more sense to stay competitive rather than necessarily just eating the fact that he's going to be a 28-year-old running back this time next year. So rattling off the trades real quick, he traded away, it looks like Cooper Kupp last year before the draft, and he got the 101 and a late or projected early 2023
105.
first. I'm guessing is the 105 now. So yeah, he got Breece Hall basically in the 105 for Cooper Kupp this time last year.
Yeah, this is a no-brainer. First of all, if I'm looking at it realistically, even with what we know now, obviously it's a woodshed type of move, but even at the time, what Cooper Kupp and Breece Hall were pretty much going in the same round of dynasty drafts. Cooper Kupp was like a third, early to mid third round pick. Breece Hall typically in that area as well. So that should have been a one-to-one transition, but the fact you got, at the time or projected early, currently materializing to the 105 with it. I mean, you're adding potentially quarterback equity, Jahmyr Gibbs.
Well, it's a one quarterback league, so you're probably looking at one of the wide receivers at 105. But even still, that's still a great asset to add. And if Breece never gets injured, this is an absolute woodshed type of trade, because Breece would be, in a one quarterback format, probably the 103 or better off the board in a startup for the most part. In most people's minds. So the other trades that he made here, we'll just rattle these off quickly. Saquon, Ayuk, Kittle, and a late 2023 first in exchange for Elijah Pitts and Deontay. Now, unfortunately, Elijah Moore and Deontay Johnson did not have great seasons and their value went down. So, and Saquon and Kittle and Ayuk conversely probably had great seasons. Kyle Pitts is a great asset to have, don't get me wrong, but I think you probably lost this trade given that Elijah Moore and Deontay Johnson didn't necessarily take the steps that you wanted them to take. And Saquon Barkley, maybe you were one of the Saquon Barkley is injury prone guys and you didn't necessarily, view him as like giving up all that much. I think you probably lost this one given that Saquon is so much more valuable at this point.
Yeah, I mean, like you lost it. However, you got a piece in Kyle Pitts specifically that is going to hold his value regardless of what happens, which is a nice, liquid asset that you can keep. Yes, you gave up Saquon, you gave up Kittle, you gave up 2023 first and Ayuk, which realistically would have gave that guy production in a late first this year to add a prospect. But I mean, it's not like you're just getting, an asset. Like if you did this for Travis Kelce, it would have been fucking a disaster. If you did this for, even Mark Andrews, he lost some value. Like that would have been, a lot worse than doing it for a guy like Kyle Pitts, because we saw he had, a bad production year. And yeah, some casual minds, he's gone down in value, but realistically in most sharp leagues, he's still going to be, a top 15 level startup pick. Next deal though, 2023 second and 2024 third, you got Mike Williams.
Easy move. Next.
Yeah. That's fine. Thielen 2024 second for Godwin. What's going on? Eno and a third for Calvin Ridley. Yeah,
easy move. Next.
Late first for Miles Sanders and third. I don't really like this move.
Yeah, it's a one quarterback late first, so I mean it's not as quite as valuable as like a super flex first round pick or something. But yeah, I mean Sanders, he didn't actually say like did he win the league or anything like that. If you were a competitive team, which I assume you were with Josh Allen and Eckler and all these dudes this year, if you ended up winning your league, I don't think this was a terrible move to make because Sanders probably helped you with it.
Yeah, I think he said this too. I think he messaged me. I might have overpaid for Sanders, but I'm fine with making the move. And if that's the case, like yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I would have preferred the late first equity, but if it helped you accomplish potentially competing for the chip because you had Eckler and Josh Allen, other guys like that, like yeah, go ahead. If you thought he could potentially give you top 15 level numbers the rest of the year, the opportunity cost isn't as steep as, say, giving a mid first. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the final thing he says, we can move on to the next team. He says, trying to swing a trade for Garrett Wilson using Godwin and Bellinger. I'd be willing to give up a 2 on top of that and still get that done. Godwin versus Garrett Wilson is, Godwin and a 2. I would probably still take Garrett Wilson.
One quarterback, I'm willing to give up a mid to late 1 to do that, to be honest.
Yeah. If it's like the one, like you're 109 right now, you might be able to get it done. Godwin in the 109 for Garrett Wilson and a 2 or something like that. And that'd be a pretty easy move for me to make. So yeah, moving on to the next team here, we got Powerman 29. He finished second in his league, which was better than expected because his quarterback 2 slot and his tight end or his running back core not in the greatest position. He said he's wondering what to do to get the most out of his draft picks. He said he's trying to think who we can trade for at the quarterback position, whether it's like a Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or something like that. And if not, get one of the quarterbacks in this year's draft class at the very least. He says it's not a tight end premium, so he's looking to use one of them to possibly upgrade at another position or help trade up to the 101. So he said should be a lock to make playoffs easy. And then he had some in-season trades that he made as well. So looking at the team, Burrow, Winston, Purdy, Love, like he said, his quarterback 2 spot was in shambles, but he was able to piece it together this year. Breece Hall, Swift, Rashad White, etc. there. At running back, Chase, AJ Brown, Metcalf is a pretty loaded top of the wide receiver position. And then tight end, Pitts and Hawkinson and Dulcich. Again, like he has a very, very loaded tight end position. He could definitely trade. Probably TJ Hawkinson is the guy that we would suggest for sure. In 2023 is the 102, 103, and 104. And it doesn't look like he has, 111 and the 204 as well. So a lot of valuable draft capital there, all like top 15 picks. Missing his second in 2024, but he has every other pick. And then in 2025 has all of his picks. Again, I don't really need to spend too much time on this team because you're very, very well set up. If you had to, like he said, I think the best thing that you should do is go out and trade for another elite quarterback to go alongside Joe Burrow. You have the 102, the 103, the 104, the 111, and the 204. And I mean, Brock Purdy has some value right now. Maybe you throw him into the deal just to, give them a quarterback back, quote unquote. And you can take 102, 103, and Brock Purdy. What kind of quarterback can you get with those 2 picks?
With those 2 picks and Brock Purdy?
Yeah.
Fuck, man. Like,
should be able to get Herbert with that, right?
Easily. I'm looking higher than that. I'm looking like 102, 103, and Purdy might be able to get you Mahomes.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, even if you have to throw in the 204 to get Mahomes, I'd be cool with that as well. So yeah,
easily. Well, I was saying maybe you use 102 and Purdy to see if that gets you to T-Law or Fields if somebody isn't fully bought in, because realistically, like what's the difference in startup value between? And of course, you add a late piece in, but I mean, if we're looking at the 102, the 103, and Purdy, probably is worth what? Round 2 startup value for the 102, maybe mid round 3 startup value for the third rounder, and then Brock Purdy's probably by the end of the offseason probably going to find his way into the single digit rounds of startups. So if you're packaging all those pieces together, I'm looking for at least mid first round startup value if I'm giving a 2, a 3, and let's say an 8 or 9 of contextual value.
Right. That's why I said Herbert, because I figured Herbert would be in the kind of like mid-first range. Lamar Jackson also makes a ton of sense there as well. Trevor Lawrence, I think, also a fine guy to go after as well. Yeah, I mean, I think that is the 100% the move that 100%. I'd be making, because you're loaded at tight end. You're loaded at wide receiver at the top. Maybe you want to, trade for some depth or spend some draft picks on some wide receivers. But for the most part, this team is in a very, very good spot. And you can add, maybe a running back at 104 or something to help out with that core with Hall, with Swift, with Rashad White. This is like a shell of like a, fragile like build where you have, 2 elite quarterbacks. Ideally, when you make that trade, you have a stud wide receiver group, and then you have, Kyle Pitts at tight end. If you're looking to move off of TJ Hawkinson, I would maybe go after a wide receiver instead of draft picks, because if you can go after like a buy low candidate, like a Deontay Johnson with TJ Hawkinson, or maybe a Marquise Brown, or somebody that's going to give you like good wide receiver depth production that is more valuable in our opinions than TJ Hawkinson long-term, that would probably benefit your team as well.
Yep. No, I definitely agree. Overall, you're in a very good spot.
Gave up Brian Robinson, Isaiah Likely, the 106, his own 2024 first and a 2024 second. He received Christian McCaffrey and Kyle Pitts. So, I mean, Pitts probably worth the 2 1s, I would say. The 106 and the 2024 first, and then CMC for the 2 Likely and Brian Robinson. Like, give me CMC and Pitts there. So, and then he eventually traded away CMC, trades away CMC, receives Swift and the 104. Given your team, I might have held on to Christian McCaffrey there, or maybe gotten somebody a little bit more valuable than Swift. I don't know. For the most part, I think that's pretty fair trade, just value-wise, but Christian McCaffrey would have fit the build of his team is the only kind of hesitancy that I have there.
I don't really think that CMC is much more valuable than the 104 in terms of startup value. And then you're taking a chance on a 23-year-old running back that the market is completely down on. And as they'll say, you got to fade the public when everybody's down on something. It usually means that you can get value out of it. And DeAndre Swift seems like the prime example of somebody that everybody is completely down on without recognizing that if the guy just stays healthy, he can legitimately be an Eckler light in terms of that Detroit offense next year.
Yeah, for sure. So we can move on to the next team. I think he's in a great spot. Quick Six says just some talking points. How does the roster look? Anybody he should offload or anybody in specific he should look to buy? Again, in our Dynasty Rankings Manifesto 2.0, we have people listed as hard buys and hard or soft buys and hard sells and all that kind of stuff. So usually most of our buy low candidates can be found there. He said, what should he do with the 101? Should he split it into multiple assets or take Bijan Robinson, which seems to be a theme so far in the Dynasty Decisions series? I'm sure more people are going to have that question who have the 101. And he said, if he is able to split Bijan 1 into 2 first this year, or maybe 1 next year as well, I think that's a no-brainer. So he thinks, in his opinion, that Bijan is worth 2 first this year. He didn't say where, and 1 next year. So if he can get 3 1s, I would agree. Like that is probably what I'm looking for. 3 1s is the going price for Bijan Robinson. Or this year, if you could only get 2 1s this year, what picks do you need to move off of Bijan? 2 top 5?
Probably, I mean, contextually speaking, if you can get like something, I'd be willing to do it for like the 102 and like the 107, to be honest.
Yeah, but that's probably like the bare minimum I'm selling on Bijan. I would prefer to get like 102, 105 or something like that.
Yeah.
If I can, or 102 in like a projected early to mid 2024 first or something like that would make some sense as well. So he has the team listed here. It's Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, etc. They're a quarterback. Nobody of note at running back, like we always like to build it. Justin Jefferson, Jameson Williams, Elijah Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson, etc. They're at wide receiver. Greg Dulcich and Delanie Woods there. And then, a lot of draft capital, 101, 104, 111, 201, 205, 4/3, 2/4, and then 2 of each pick in each round in 2024, plus an extra third in 2024 as well. And then all of his picks in 2025. So, I mean, looking at this team, the stud factors there. You have Watson, you have Lawrence, you have Justin Jefferson. Like you have the shell of a future great team. You got to spend these picks. You got to hit on these picks, obviously. Jameson Williams, we've talked about, is potentially a sell candidate. If you can transition him into Drake London instead, whether you have to do Jameson Williams and the 205 for Drake London, I'd be willing to do that because I think Drake London showed a lot more. And in terms of like a long-term rebuild, like it looks like you're in, I would rather have Drake London 10 times out of 10 over Jameson Williams as well. But for the most part, I think, do you spend this pick? Like, let's go back to the question at hand. It looks like the biggest question he has is, do I draft Bijan Robinson? Let's say you can't get, the value. And we've answered this question before. I just want to repeat it here for people who haven't heard it.
If you can't get the adequate value for Bijan Robinson, you take Bijan Robinson. It's that simple. This is the type of team where, you're not completely stricken of talent. Like, it's not like you have next to nothing and you got to consolidate Bijan into whatever you can get. Like, this isn't like one of those orphans you see on Twitter that legitimately has no picks and no adequate player depth because they traded for, 3 first-round picks for Dalvin Cook back in 2019. Like, no, like you have a lot of building blocks here. If somebody's not willing to give you the adequate price for Bijan Robinson, you take Bijan Robinson and you use the opportunity in season when he's giving you top 5 level value to see if somebody might be interested then.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like if you're able to hit on some of these picks, you add Bijan to this team, you add, let's say, Gibbs to this team, or you add, Addison to this team, and then 111, 201, 205, you can get solid wide receiver and running back prospects there as well. You can build out a shell of like potentially a house money year once you spend those 2024 draft picks. And then, by 2025, hopefully those players have developed if you hit on most of your picks and you're in a good spot then. So I don't think you're in a real position here where I'm like, I have to sell Bijan Robinson no matter what, because if you're able to make good on your draft capital, you might be in a house money year as early as 2024. And 2024, Bijan Robinson will be a second-year running back. It's not like the guy's going to be in his 4th season by the time you're ready to use him. And like Danny said, even if that was the case and you didn't want to, use that production, by mid-season, his rookie year, his value will most assuredly go up based on what I've seen from the player himself. And if he gets first-round draft capital to a good offense, he might go up in value, more by the end of the draft. Like if he goes to the Eagles or the Dolphins or something like that during the draft, the 101 will go up in value inherently.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Overall, you're in a good spot in terms of the other picks that you have, 104, 111. Basically, leverage the opportunity, see what type of trade package that you can maybe put together. But I'm fine with sticking and picking if you have to. Typically for this roster, I would probably say 104, maybe see, again, this would be the transition. Maybe see if 104 can net you an Amon or St. Brown. Maybe see if 104 can net you. Maybe somebody is enamored with Jahmyr Gibbs or really, really is desperate for whatever the quarterback 2 is and is willing to give you, Garrett Wilson for it. If that's the case and you're able to make that type of transition, all to it. But overall, I mean, the way you've built this team, the adequate draft capital you have, some franchise level players that you can build around long term. I'm comfortable with where you're at and just kind of, picking and choosing when you need to.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Let's move on to the last team in the video, and then we can
Yep.
head out of here. Chad McRad here, 12-team Superflex. This is an interesting scoring format. I've never actually seen this. Half PPR, but it scales to 1 point for catches of 10+ yards, which is kind of cool to me. I've never actually played in a league like that. I play in leagues with like big play bonuses and stuff, but I've never had the PPR value go up for long catches, which kind of, makes sense, right? Because then those dump offs aren't as valuable as like a deep catch down the field. So that's kind of interesting. I kind of like that rule. But he has Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson as his main quarterbacks, Breece Hall, J.K. Dobbins, Rachaad White, et cetera, there at running back. T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Brandon Ayuk, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore at wide receiver, Greg Dulcich, Cole Kmet mainly at tight end. 103, which is his own at the 2023 first there, 206, 210, 303, and then all of his picks in future years, but an additional second and an additional third in 2024. So it is a super flex league. Most of his stuff here, he says it's a fresh league. The startup was in 2021. He took over an orphan team in a different dynasty league for the first time ever playing in a dynasty league. So his first team was an orphan. This is the first team that looks like he drafted. He said he won that league and then it basically dissolved. So he took over an orphan that ended up winning the league, which is kind of interesting. I've never seen that happen, but maybe, the guy just couldn't afford to play in the league or anything. But he basically wanted to go lean, try and build up a team for this league and give himself a challenge, which I know both of us kind of can attest to. It's fun rebuilding dynasty teams as much as, some people on Twitter complain that like, oh, you're throwing money out the window. It's like, I mean, in the future, we're not, because if we build it properly, we're going to reap the rewards at that point. But it's also just fun to do this too. So definitely understand it. He also lists some other rules here and some trades. But overall, what are your thoughts on the team? And then we'll get into some of the trades that he has.
Yeah, I mean, you've clearly built this well. You got 2 main complete building blocks at quarterback. The RB1 currently on keep trade cut with Breece Hall along with adequate depth. Your receiver core is absolutely loaded to the brim. And I mean, although you don't have a quote unquote set tight end right now, Greg Dulcich showing a ton of signs, was a top 12 tight end for us in our tight end rankings. And I mean, if Dalton Schultz leaves,
I knew you were going to bring up Jake Ferguson here.
I think that's a solid number 2 tight end or number 3 actually, because I saw Cole Kmet now. I just noticed that. But I mean, long term, tight end 2, tight end 3. I don't mind, having a guy like that, because realistically, like Dalton Schultz was Jake Ferguson before Dalton Schultz became Dalton Schultz, to be honest. So, and having that type of stash, especially on your taxi squad, you're not really relying upon him to do it. It's just kind of a bonus if he does, Dalton Schultz does leave and Jake Ferguson does give you, top 15 level production next year because Dalton Schultz is gone. That's just like, a little whipped cream on the top, if I would say, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't disagree. So let's rip through these trades one by one. I'll just read the trade and then you give your thoughts on it and we'll just go back and forth here. So on August 1st of 2022, he sent away Matt Corral for the 206. I mean, 206. any third round quarterback, you give me the 206, I'm taking the 206. That's pretty easy.
206.
Yeah. And then he sends away Saquon Barkley and Miles Sanders, so a little Penn State duo there for Breece Hall and 109. So again, he made this trade in November. Saquon Barkley was kind of a known asset, being elite at that point in Miles Sanders. But I mean, given his team situation, I don't hate the Breece Hall side, but for the most part, I would say it's a pretty even trade.
I want Breece. The way I look at it, I currently have Breece Hall ranked ahead of Saquon Barkley in my dynasty rankings, and I would much rather the 109 over Miles Sanders. So it's pretty simple.
Fair. So we got Andy Dalton, Curtis Samuel, and Darius Slayton, a bunch of nobodies for the 111. Easy trade. So Gardner Minshew for the 210. Easy trade. Again, he sold Gardner Minshew, the Jalen Hurts manager, after the injury news. So the guy just like bought low on Gardner Minshew. I guess for what it's worth, Gardner Minshew had a good performance fantasy-wise against the Dallas Cowboys. So not a terrible trade on his part, but I would say probably not worth the 210 for the most part. And then we got, after the season was over, he sold Trey Lance, the 109, Brock Purdy in the 403, and he got Lamar Jackson, Josh Palmer in the third. So this is what I'm very likely to do with Trey Lance, because you're a little bit more bullish on Trey Lance than I am.
I'm high on Trey Lance, but if this offer came into my inbox, I'm hitting the accept to the point where my finger breaks, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. If I have Trey Lance and Brock Purdy on my roster, that like double condom safety in people's mind is going to allow you to get up to guys like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Justin Herbert, who are like the buy low, better quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson also kind of in that territory. People are scared to trade for Trey Lance by himself, but if you get Purdy on top of him, then people are like, for whatever reason, they're just totally sold that it's a safe trade to make and there's
They
no
love it.
risk behind it.
Dude, they love it. They see Brock Purdy's leading them to the NFC Championship. They know, okay, you know what? I got the San Francisco quarterback locked down. All jokes aside, though, really good deal. And then finally, this deal. I mean, 203, 2024 second. Yeah, you're gonna rather the 203, but realistically, there's not much of a difference, to be honest, assuming that's a mid projected too. And then you're getting DK Metcalf for the 111. So
yeah, I mean, as much as I like David Bell coming out, he ain't worth that much now. And DK Metcalf is easily worth this package by himself, in my opinion.
You may have to pay me a pick to take on David Bell at this point. He quite literally had the I think he was by far the worst graded receiver in the NFL, and it wasn't even close.
He wasn't the worst graded. I think he was like 117 out of 119. Though it was like Robbie Anderson and like somebody rando like that was worse than him. Like it was pretty bad. So I would say definitely not a guy that's holding a ton of value at this point in time. So that is the end of the video. I mean, we can quickly wrap up our thoughts on this team. I would say, you're in a good spot. You've built out a young nucleus. You have, draft picks and be able to, acquire pieces. You have a young stable of quarterbacks. You're in a really good spot. There's nothing really I would change with what you're doing and how you're approaching things right now. So I would say just continue kind of doing what you're doing, spend your draft picks, move for veterans if you need to. But for the most part, we are going to wrap this video up. It went a little longer than we'd like to, but if you guys enjoyed, if you made it to the end, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, comment down below any of your thoughts, and also be sure to check out our Patreon to get access to these videos. Be the first ones in, get your team read off for you, and we'll give you as much personalized advice as we can. And you can also get access to our Dynasty Rankings Manifesto and all that good stuff over there on Patreon. So with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.
Wire me the money.